Hey folks, welcome to Transplant Helper today. My name is Jim Murrell. I've been asked on numerous occasions by various viewers, Jim Murrell, who in the world are you? And every time I've been asked that question, I kind of blow it off. I don't really give an answer to it because I've never really understood why anyone would want to know. But a viewer recently clarified that for me by adding to the question, Jim, we want to know who you are because we trust you, we get advice from you, we let you educate us on a regular basis, but we want to know where you're coming from. So with that said, I thought to myself, you know what? I think I will give a little bit of insight into my life. Maybe we can better understand one another, and maybe we can go forward with an even better relationship. And by the way, all of you who already subscribed to my channel, thank you for that. I enjoy your comments, your feedback, and all of that. But nonetheless, I think it's time for this video. So if you want to back up in your mind's eye, if you have that, back until 1975. It was on March the 12th, 1975 that Jim Murrell was born in Anniston, Alabama. Now at that particular point in time, there was no clue, no idea that I was sick. But several days post being born, just a few days as a matter of fact, within inside of a week, my parents were told that I had a condition of the heart known as transposition of the great vessels or transposition of the great arteries. Now, upon being told that, they, like any parent back in 1975, had no earthly idea what that was. They didn't even know to be afraid. But nonetheless, as the doctors went on to explain that, they were extremely afraid. As a matter of fact, the news they were being told basically then was, your child has this condition, there's nothing much that we can do about it, and he's probably going to die. Now, fast forward just a little bit farther than that, the doctors began to discuss the possibility out there, the far-fetched possibility that I could be operated on, that something could surgically be done perhaps that might save my life. But the difficulty in that was that back in 1975, rarely did they ever operate on any child less than a year old. And of course, being a newborn, I was far less than that. So, you know, what were they to do? But nonetheless, they decided that they were going to try to get my weight up, try to get my age up and put some time behind me, and then eventually perhaps do a somewhat experimental procedure and see if they could correct my problem. But the problem was, after about 6 months or so, I'd only gained about 3 pounds since birth, and I just wasn't doing good. As a matter of fact, I was being referred to at that point as what they called a blue baby, because my skin was typically bluish or purplish because of the lack of oxygen from that condition, as well as the fact I was having to be resuscitated on a regular basis. So a very, very scary time for my parents. But nonetheless, at about 6 months old, the doctors kind of threw in the towel. They said, this child won't make it if he's not operated on immediately. I wasn't that year old, but at 6 months, they decided to go ahead and do that. And basically, through the providence of God and good luck and good favor, whatever you want to call it, certainly a blessing, one of the best doctors eventually in the entire world decided to do my surgery. And of course, there was a lot that went into that, but he decided to do a procedure on me, that what was called a mustard procedure. Now at the time, it wasn't the best fix at all. They've got better fixes for transposition now, but nonetheless, it's all they had in 1975. So in September of 1975, I was operated on, given basically the chances of coming out of surgery of only about 10% or so, but nonetheless, went into surgery and came out. Now I had a little bit of a bleeder. They had to go back in, do some more repair, but nonetheless, I made it. So fast forward in your mind throughout my entire childhood, teenage years, and young adulthood, I did just fine. Now that's basically all that I had to deal with. I never took a pill. I had some restrictions and limitations as far as my physical exercise and what I could do, but nonetheless, life was basically great. Then, if you move until a time when I was about 32 years old, I started to have heart rhythm problems. Now that was the first, if you will, warning sign that something was about to come around the corner. And as things began to progress very quickly and I began to fall apart, basically, I ended up in stage 4 heart failure, being told that I was in need of a heart transplant. Now let's pause right there. That's at 32. There's actually a lot that happened between birth and 32, mainly the fact that by that time I was already married. As a matter of fact, to this date, I've been married to my wife over 20 years, and to this date I have 5 children. Now 2 of those children by birth, my 15-year-old and my 11-year-old, and then I've got 2 children right now that have been adopted, and a fifth children, or the third of the adopted children, but 5 total, the 5th one about to be adopted in the coming days. And that is basically the highlight of my life. Being married to my wife, she's my caregiver, she's my soulmate, she's my whatever you want to call her, and then having my 5 children, that's what makes the world go around for me. That's what life is really all about. Now, I just wanted to mention that because some of you don't really realize I have the wife and the child, because I don't mention them very often at all on the program. Nonetheless, backing again till the time I'm 32, I began to have all the problems, and I began to go down a spiraling path of destruction. That is, my body, my heart was falling apart, and the only option I had was transplant. Now, at that point in time, having young children, 2 children by birth then, I was scared to death of transplant. Not that I was afraid of transplant. I certainly wasn't afraid of dying necessarily, albeit I wasn't excited about it. But I was scared to death of transplant because I did not want anything to happen that would jeopardize me coming out of surgery and watching my children grow up. That was my number one goal, was to watch my children grow up. Currently, I'm still doing that. So let's hope that goes well. But nonetheless, that's what I was afraid of. And I was being told, and these are still real statistics, by the way, but I was being told that the average lifespan of a heart transplant patient post-transplant is only about 5 years. Now, someone would immediately start commenting, I've had my transplant 17 years, 18 years, 30 years. I get that. I'm talking average lifespan. That is, there are a lot of people who die within a year. There are a lot of people who live to 20 or 30 years, but the average lifespan was 5. So I began to do the math and told myself, you know what? That's not good enough. So I don't want a transplant only to live 5 years. So I was hoping to push that date back, because I thought every day on this side of transplant is another day on that side of transplant. So let's just hold back on that. As a matter of fact, for a 6-year period, I was able to do that. For 6 years, I was being looked at, monitored carefully, considered again to be in stage 4 heart failure. But for 6 years, I was evaluated a total of 4 times, where 3 of the 4 times they said, Jim, you're borderline. You could be transplanted. You could not. Maybe you can make it. So if they would give me 6 more months, I would wait, be reevaluated, and here we go again. So I put that off for about 6 years. And then at the end of the 6-year period, on the 4th evaluation, they decided, you know what, you have to do this. You're backed into a corner. This is what has to be done. I've just recently finished up a video series about the evaluation process I can link to here in the corners and in the show notes below that'll kind of help you get some insight to that. But nonetheless, was evaluated, spent basically the last 2 years of that in and out of the hospital, in more than out, going through the problems and the difficulties we all deal with. And finally, on May the 23rd, 2013, received the greatest gift of my entire physical life, and that was a brand new heart. My donor was 50 years old, from Oklahoma. His nickname, he's called, is Dickie. Dickie was my donor, and Dickie and his family obviously made that decision. I received my organ, and now I'm 4.5 years post-transplant. In the last 4.5 years, I've taken my 2 birth children, added to them 3 more, 2 of which, as I said, were already adopted, 1 being adopted currently, and my life has gotten even better. Now, are days perfect? No. Do I have up days and down days? Yes. Do I have good days and bad days? Yes. I've talked about that on the program before, but that's where I live now. So, I would encourage anyone, basically, in light of my life, and I gave very few details about it. I've got kind of my whole life story I can link here below if you're interested. I don't understand why, but, I have learned over the course of my life as a congenital heart patient, as a heart failure patient, and finally a transplant patient, you just have to live life to its fullest. One of my friends right now that I featured on this program not too long ago, Jordan Marcia, is currently a 20+ year heart transplant survivor, and he's traveling the world right now, literally traveling the world, especially in Asia, I think right now, or the Far East nonetheless. And he's just seeing the world. He quit his job. He's going around doing exactly what he wanted to do. Now, I'm not really the character for that. I'm kind of a homebody. I like being here in my house, here in my yard. I live in the country. But nonetheless, I'm getting to do what I want to do too. And so I want to encourage you with this. Do whatever you can. Do whatever makes you feel good. And for me, honestly, above many things, not everything, but above many things in my life, Being the transplant helper makes me feel good. I like having this YouTube channel. I like having my Facebook pages and my Twitter handles and all, and connecting with you, building this community. That's what excites me pretty much more than anything. And my YouTube channel, if you've not already subscribed to it, I would encourage you to subscribe to it if you're a pre or post-transplant patient, because I basically filled a niche or niche, whichever one you call that here, of a place where I couldn't find anything else. You know, there are people who do YouTube channels where they tell about their journey. They tell about, their experience as a transplant, what it was like to get the call, what it was like to wake up from transplant. They tell all those wonderful stories, and I love them. Matter of fact, I've got a whole playlist I'm putting together about survival stories, wonderful stories. But that wasn't really helping me face transplant. And on the other hand, there are a lot of doctors and transplant centers out there that put out a lot of very technical white coat videos about transplant, about how to live through it and how to survive it and what you're expecting. They never come across to me either. So I decided, let's fill a gap there. Let's fill a gap where people can get to know one another, become a community, and learn the practical things that they need to learn. And again, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not any of the things sometimes I probably present myself as on here, because I'm just one of you. I'm simply a person. Jim Murrell is a transplant patient, a heart transplant patient. I live my life just like you do. I wake up every morning just like you do, and I pillow my head at night as thankful as you do. And I just want to fill a gap and make a place where we can gather together and learn and feed from each other. As I like to say that I try to do it, I like to advocate, educate, and motivate you as a transplant patient. Now, I've tried to keep this a little bit brief. Maybe it's already gone too long. You may have clicked away. Well, of course, I guess if you clicked away, you wouldn't know it now. But, if you stuck with me, thank you so much. I would encourage you, tell your story and help someone. Spend your days helping someone. Make your life worth something. That's what I really want to do. That's who Jim Murrell is. Jim Murrell is about trying to help other people and to help people to live life the best that they can. And especially, just helping us feel a part of something. And I thank you so much for being a part of this work, the Transplant Helper. Now, if you've found this video helpful, how about like, subscribe, share, even hit the bell notification next to the subscribe button. That's great to do. And just let me help you. Let me do my part. And then you can comment, give me your feedback. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to know your stories. Again, I just want to be a part of your life. But until next time, friends, stay stronger.